We need to rethink how we do engagement and the stories that we're telling about the technology. If the story about the technology is, teaching people Punnett squares and understanding inheritance so that they can understand a gene drive, and that's the whole story. Or if the story of if the story of a gene drive is starting with these sort of urgency narratives, right? Like the consequences of malaria, the consequences of environmental degradation, and then that's sort of the framing. It just leaves a lot out if the technology is then introduced as the intervention or sort of sole intervention, right? I think we're ignoring the very complex political and economic and social conditions. We need to be open to telling different kinds of stories when we talk about gene drives, because I think it's very common to focus on educating folks around the technology, right? It's very common to surface certain ethical questions and considerations, about gene drive. There's lots of talk about negotiating trans-border decisions and movements of these organisms. There's lots of talk about who should make decisions and all that, but I think that we need to broaden the lens even further to think about the kind of social and political and economic contexts in which these technologies would be deployed, right? Science doesn't happen in a vacuum. Technologies are not created in a vacuum, and I think it would be really helpful or a generative, at least first step, to start, speaking some of that into the narrative when we talk about gene drive. So that includes really being open to naming, who some of the major funders and developers of these technologies are, and what that means, what the histories of our institutions are where these technologies are developed, or the organizations are. I think we tend not to talk about or reflect on that, in my own experience at least, when we talk about gene drive.